you're
Every
willing,
developed country doesn't have this problem.
this is my first time coming
No,
across
you're
this. I
good.
literally
So
was
I
just
would just
scrolling.
argue that systemically, when we try to measure access, what we're really trying to determine is like how easy is it for someone to receive treatment and the healthcare they need, right? And I would argue that wait times are longer in Canada, and that is a barrier for Canadians being able to access the treatment that they need because they're waiting longer for it. But the issue is that they're still guaranteed care and they're still receiving that healthcare at the end of the day, right? Where in the US, 100 million Americans have had medical debt at some point in their life, right? And, and 41% of adults are currently carrying some form of healthcare related debt. And according to KFF, like 36% of adults have reported in the past 12 months they have skipped or postponed getting medical health care they needed due to cost. And cost is a big, barrier to Americans being able to access the healthcare system. I'm simply saying that per capita, there are more Canadians at the end of the day receiving treatment and healthcare than Americans, and that's why it's more accessible.
So medical debt, although is very sad, it is typically the most discredited debt. It is the easiest to get. Like once you're educated on medical debt and you go to the hospital, a lot of times, depending on financial hardships, like hospitals either write it off or there's a plethora of things. Like medical debt actually doesn't even affect your ability to apply for a home loan to get a place. Like it
So
is a
hold on.
mass.
Hold on. So you're kind of mistaking my position. Let me just clarify, right? I'm saying 100 million Americans have gone to medical debt to show that cost is something that doesn't affect a few Americans, affects a lot. But it's mainly the fact that 36% of adults, right, in the past 12 months have skipped or postponed care due to cost, right? Which is around, the same amount of Americans that have gone through medical debt, like roughly one third of the population, roughly, right? And I'm saying that the Americans that are skipping care is the reason why healthcare is not as accessible, mainly, right, than in Canada, where even though you're waiting longer, you're still receiving treatment. So I'm not just saying because you're in debt, therefore it's better in Canada. It's the Americans that are skipping care and not getting healthcare is worse than waiting longer but still receiving it.
But I think that is blatantly, I disagree with that point because I think accessibility means the ability to even go get it, right? And
Yes,
so
and
it's
36% of
it
adults
is
have not. So has one
well,
third of Canadians gone into or skipping
but
care?
they're not because of financial reasons. And what I was arguing was
Yeah,
the
like
financial side of it is very easy to get. Like it's not easy to get rid of, but at the same time, there are ways around it, right?
Six no,
It
but
shouldn't
no,
hinder
no,
your
no. Hold
life.
on. We'll debate about the ways in a moment. But 60% of all bankruptcies in the U.S. are tied to healthcare, right? So to say that there's ways around it, that's not always the case for Americans, right? And when Americans skip care, even though you could argue, well, if they made like certain other decisions, they could have been avoided. The fact that Americans are skipping treatment, period, right, because of the cost, right? Do we one third? Do we see one third of Canadians skipping care due to wait times? No. Right? So there's more Canadians receiving treatment. You're giving an excuse for
What is
why
the average
it's less
wait time to
accessible
see a
in the US.
neurologist?
I don't know on the top of my head.
I don't have a computer in front of me. Are you able to Google that
Well,
to
I
see
don't know
just
specifically with that special, like again with that
well,
specialty.
because what I'm
Are you,
going with
and also
is
what province? In a rural area, an urban area? You're not proving a
let's
point.
Toronto. Toronto's the biggest city in Canada, correct?
Yeah, fourth largest North America. Yeah.
I believe Medicaid should be more accessible. Like
Oh yeah,
there's, I agree with you on that side. This would be
plenty
less
of
of a
coverage
debate
gaps.
if Medicaid raised their rates on what like qualified for Medicaid and spend down and all this other stuff.
Okay, few
However,
things like in terms of access, right? I'll talk about Medicaid. Like even the biggest problem that I have with Medicaid is the Medicaid expansion under the ACA. How not all states qualify for the Medicaid expansion. Where if you're an adult with no children in 10 states in the U.S., you don't qualify regardless of income. So in states like Texas, 1.5 million Americans are not able to qualify for Medicaid despite being low income. And I think that that's a huge problem that specifically like states like in the South are experiencing. That I think that's my biggest problem with Medicaid. The thing is though, back to access, right? I think me and you could agree that not receiving healthcare is worse than someone that waits longer but receives it at the end of the day. Now, the person waiting longer, they can have negative health
I
outcomes as
disagree
a
with that.
result. Hold on, they could suffer more. They're still suffering, right? They can have negative health effects, but if you're still receiving healthcare, I'm arguing that that's better than not. You disagree with that?
I so here's my point on this. I think it is better regardless of the financial, like let's move off of the dementia, but
No,
let's
I'm
say
saying in
cancer.
this scenario.
I know in this scenario, what I'm saying is you're diagnosed, you go to the hospital, you have, like, this is how real life happens, right? there is an incident, you go to the hospital, they run x-rays, they run CAT scans, they do the whole test, and they say, hey, you're diagnosed with lung cancer. That next step is going to see a specialist. The wait times in Canada can take however long. Like, I don't know off the top of my head, but I do have a buddy that lives in Toronto, and his mom went through very severe cancer treatments as well. Unfortunately, she did not make it, but she had to wait a year and a half before treatment. In Houston alone, you can get within a month.
So again, when it comes to access, right? I agree with you that wait times are longer. You're not proving, right, the analogy I just gave you. You're just dodging the
I
question.
know, but where I'm getting with that is in a year and a half of cancer being diagnosed but not being treated, it can metastasize and blow up and become.
Again, okay, so I'm going to answer the question again because even with your clarification, you're not answering the question. Medically speaking, what is worse in this hypothetical? I'm not saying that this applies to Canada directly with your case, right, with your anecdote. I'm saying what's worse? Someone who does not receive treatment, which you're not comparing with Texas with your example, or someone, in the US and what they're experiencing. You said they're waiting a month versus a year. That's not what I'm asking you. I'm saying someone who does not receive health care versus someone that waits longer but still gets it. What is better under that circumstance?
You're saying
the person who gets health care, period, is better than not getting it, even though they may suffer during that process of the wait time.
But the thing is, they can get treatment. They're choosing to not.
Okay, hold on. We had now. Again, you're adding more to this analogy, right? Hold on. I know. Again, you're deflecting.
If I can say my part real quick, hold on.
You're not answering.
I am answering, because what the part you're diminishing on mine is the same I'm doing to you. I'm saying you're putting parameters on this, saying if you look at this small little box of a third of Americans don't get treatment because of whatever, and is that worse than having to wait longer to get treatment? What I'm saying is,
no, that's not. Again, what I'm saying is that medically speaking, somebody who gets treatment, even if they wait longer for it, right, has a better health outcomes as a result in general than the health outcomes of a patient who does not receive care. Forget about the studies and stuff. I'm just saying medically speaking, right?
Obviously,
what is worse?
Correct.
Obviously. Okay, perfect. So now that we established that not receiving care is worse than someone who's waiting longer but still gets it at the end of the day, right? What I'm saying to you is, when we know that like 1/3 of Americans, which by the way, if you're uninsured, even with the study, right, specifically, it's 75% of Americans that are uninsured have skipped or postponed care in the past year alone due to cost. Again, due to cost. You're trying to say that's their choice because they can't afford the most expensive healthcare system in the world, right? Like literally per capita, it costs 2 times. Hold on, it costs 2 times more to give the average American healthcare than the average Canadian.
Well, and that's because of insurance versus nationalized care, essentially insurance. And the reality is, hospitals in America cannot
private.
refuse. Well, yeah, but also that allows us to do the R&D and everything along those lines. Where I'm going with this is, hospitals in America cannot refuse treatment.
Triage exists in both countries. That's not a comparison.
Well, but the financial side, you're saying they're not getting
hold
treatment.
on, I never said they're not receiving treatment. Don't twist my words. I never said that.
Okay.
I'm saying Americans that are skipping care due to cost. For example, even like the RAND health insurance experiment, right? It was the only large randomized trial that was ever done on US health insurance design. And what they found was that the higher the healthcare cost was in the United States, the less medical procedures Americans were using. They went to the doctor less. They filed fewer prescriptions, including prescriptions for cancer treatment, right? That Americans were skipping on cancer treatment, they even found in that study, right? And it was a decade-long study that was done, right? What I'm saying is, it's very established in terms of human behavior that Americans skip on treatment, right? It's not just one source. I'm providing you 3 already, right, that are very credible sources and systematic reviews that show that it's a systemic problem that Americans are facing. And again, even though wait times, I do agree with you. We could talk about the negative health outcomes, like with the example you gave of like someone with cancer, maybe like that you described. I'm sorry, right? I'm truly, like, people get failed in the Canadian system, right? People do have negative health outcomes as a result of wait times. I'm not trying to say wait times are not a problem, but the mistake that people are making is they're saying that they're not receiving treatment even though they're waiting longer, or that the system is not accessible to people in Canada. People are
But
still
but
more commonly receiving treatment in Canada than the US, factoring in population per capita proportionally.
by that same statement, if people just forget the side of, like, because you're saying forget the wait times, they're still getting the treatment. If you just forget the financial side and get over it and just like, yeah, I'm going to go into medical debt because I'd rather be alive, like you can
The
get
reason I
treatment
said the
quicker.
reason I said forget about wait times is because even though you're waiting longer, you're still guaranteed to receive care. You're not skipping. Whereas when it comes to the cost of healthcare, right? Americans are skipping because of the cost. Canadians are not skipping because of wait times. Those are two different
But
things.
I understand, but they're skipping because of the cost, when in reality it is their human free will choice to say, I don't want to go to that appointment because I don't want to pay for it, right? Like they will treat you. They will go to you go to the hospital.
Triage exists. Can you make an argument against my rebuttal?
That was like, I understand what you're
So your
saying. Like,
rebuttal is that, hey, Canada and the US have triage. If that doesn't make the US better or worse than Canada. Triage exists in
the
both
whole argument,
countries.
or the argument originally was accessibility, and what your initial
Yes.
argument was the wait times. Getting treatment just in general, period, guaranteed treatment, regardless how long you have to wait, is better than not getting treatment because
And
you
why?
can't afford
And
it.
why do I believe that?
Because at the end of the day, some treatment is better than no treatment.
Sometimes. No, at the end of the day, you're getting the
No, some
healthcare. Yeah.
treatment, like getting treatment is better than
Yeah.
not having any treatment, period.
Exactly.
And my part,
Which
I'm
you agreed
arguing,
with me on. You agreed that,
no,
you know,
treatment is better than no treatment. But the part I'm arguing here is the reason people are not getting treatment, which is the financial side of it, correct? We both agree on that. Like, they're missing treatments because
well, the
they're
US
worried
primarily, and not to mention, like, you're not taking into consideration, like, even Americans, like, with insurance, they also have high premiums, high deductibles, high copays, right? Not to mention, 1 in every 10 claims in the US get denied, right? Like, you know, you're not also guaranteed to even receive that treatment at the end of the day, right? Where those are not just because of patient choice of them getting denied on their health
if we're
insurance.
going to move to the insurance side, I'll probably
Well, that has to
agree
do with
you on most
access.
of it.
Insurance, having health insurance in the US gives you greater access to healthcare than being
I agree,
uninsured.
but again,
That's
where
relevant.
I'm going with this is the treatment alone. Most places will give you credit, or they'll take loans, or they'll do whatever to go. You have that ability.
So
to
your
still get, you might go
argument
into
is that the cost
significant
is
debt,
better in the
but you can.
US
I'm
because
not
you don't have to
arguing the
pay for your
cost.
medical bills.
I'm arguing the straight point of accessibility here. Like, if you're willing to go into debt, you will get treatment faster in the US than you would in Canada. And that is my argument, that accessibility in the US is actually easier than Canada.
Dude, every developed country doesn't have this problem. Like, every country has solved this except for the wealthiest and most developed country in the world. It's hilarious.
Well, that's because we spend
Again,
significantly more on the military. Like,
no, it's not. No,
of
it's
our
not.
budget.
Even the Congressional Budget Office shows that the U.S. they published a systematic review that showed the U.S. can afford, economically speaking, a single-payer healthcare system with the same funds that goes towards like Medicare, Medicaid, VA, Obamacare, and CHIP, including another systematic review from PubMed. Like, dude,
So my
economically,
argument
the U.S. can
against
afford
that-
universal, but that's a different question than like access, right? But again,
so
you're trying to argue that a system that denies people 1/3 of your population's in debt, 60% of all bankruptcies are because of healthcare, and 1/3 have skipped or postponed care due to cost, right, is a more accessible system. Like 41, if I may, 41% of adults have not even filed their prescriptions in the past year due to cost, according to KFF. Like, I'm trying to understand where you're coming from when you're trying to say that the U.S. has a more accessible healthcare system. How are you getting me there?
Define accessible.
How easily and affordability people can get medical care when needed is the broad definition for specifically evaluating like wait times and cost, but also geographic access exists as well as like insurance coverage rates. I gave you a definition specifically regarding this debate for healthcare.
You gave
Yes,
me
you asked me for a definition. I'm giving you my definition for access that relates to the healthcare system. Like,
if we
how
started
easy
the
is it?
initial argument with that definition of accessibility, I would have argued the definition of accessibility is different than what it is, because I'm looking at accessibility on.
This is so funny. You listen, I'm just saying, like, for the past, like, I don't know, 5 to 10 minutes or so, we've been debating access, and you're losing so badly that now you want to argue semantics over the definition. So what's your definition of access? Am I wrong? Is there anything I said with access, by the way, with my definition that's incorrect?
Yes, I
What's
disagree.
wrong? What's wrong?
Accessibility in healthcare to me is how quickly, if something is wrong, can
How
you get
quickly?
treatment?
What about geographic access? Insurance, like, dude, insurance coverage rates. Stop. That's not a definition for access when it comes to a
Insurance
healthcare
coverage
system.
rates?
It's not just by how fast. That's one way to measure access. You know what? I'll do your same logic. Accessibility is how close you are to a hospital, geographically speaking.
Okay,
That's accessibility, right? But
you're
you see
right.
how
That
that's
is
but
accessibility.
that's an
Yes.
unfair definition. Now the issue is, what is I want you to tell me, you know the answer. This is very easy. What is the biggest barrier for Canadians being able to access healthcare?
Wait time.
Yeah.
Like,
And the biggest barrier in the US is cost. So that's why specifically like the biggest definitional component to access is how easily, right? And affordability that people can get medical care when needed, right? Because wait times makes it harder for Canadians, so it's less easy, right? And affordability because the cost is the biggest barrier. That's a definition of access that relates to both countries, not to mention geographic access that I also mentioned does matter on top of that to consider, as well as insurance coverage rates.